The journey of my film Bahadur, the Accidental Brave is actually a 7-year journey. I started with a radio program which made me look into the lives of these Nepalese migrant workers. And I felt that this is a story that needs to be told to the world because I've grown up with Nepalese domestics, with Nepalese watchmen, with Nepalese servants in my house. And when I actually got a peek into their ever smiling, on the surface lives, I realized that their lives are really, really pathetic. And what is happening is something which nobody knows and the world needs to know about it. Basically what happens is they come here and they work as migrant labor and they contract HIV and they go back and give it to their families and the children are being born with HIV, and far west Nepal is sitting on what is called a micro epidemic of AIDS. The film was, like I said, the actual filming took me about 3.5 years to make. I started shooting in April 2008. It took me about 1.5 years to get the funding, which was all self-funded. It was all my own money which I put in throughout the film, to be able to just put it together and to be able to go to Acham and shoot. So it was very, very difficult, and I completed the film. I premiered it in Kathmandu in August 2011. And I got very mixed, very interesting responses. Some people loved it, some people hated it. The Nepalese felt that I have insulted the Nepalese by making a film like this, whereas actually the whole idea was to show them a mirror to their society as to how one part of their country is so completely neglected by the other part of the country. So much so that when we went to interview the Minister of Health, he just ran away and refused to come on camera and give any kind of comment on what is happening in these migrant workers. So what happened in effect was what started off as a socio-economic film and a social health film turned into a socio-political film, because I realized that the politics of both the countries is making it very convenient for them to ignore the status and the lives of these Nepalese labor, Nepalese migrant workers. Acham was physically the most difficult shoot of my life ever. We were there for about 10 to 12 days, out of which for 9 to 10 days there was no electricity. We used to trek physically with all the equipment on our shoulders. The whole unit used to trek for at least 3 to 4 hours a day, reaching location, climbing hills, hoping not to fall and die. Our recordist almost collapsed 3 or 4 times because he was a fat guy and he could hardly manage the climb and the walk the first couple of days, and he also got used to it eventually. There was, in the civil war that happened with the Naxalites there, the Maoists, as they call them there, they blew up everything, just about everything. Agriculture only survives there for 6 months, feeds them for 6 months in a year. And every night I used to pray to God that please keep my unit safe, because I'm responsible for them and I must take them back safe and sound. Nothing should happen to them. When we came in, a landslide happened and the roads shut. When we went out, a landslide happened just after we got out. So we were really, really blessed that we were meant to go there and we were meant to do the shoot and see a completely different world. And I've been able to showcase a completely different world for the audiences, as you will see in the film. Also, the interesting thing we found was we'd gone to the festival of Dashain. Dashain is Dashera, which for them is the biggest festival. And in Dashain time is when the maximum migration happens, when people go back home to spend time with their families. And whenever any laborer leaves, or any Nepalese leaves Acham or far west Nepal, he always takes along another family member with him to get him a job in Bombay or in Delhi or in Gujarat or wherever they're living. And we were the first professional crew to have the opportunity to go and shoot in a place which is beautiful, which is green, which is lovely, but which has nothing. All these people had seen a professional camera for the first time in their lives. They had no issues whatsoever in coming onto the open in front of the camera and speaking about their lives as complete naturals. Most of the time what I've seen in my 30 years of filmmaking is that the moment you put a camera on somebody's face, he becomes somebody else or she becomes somebody else. They start projecting themselves as somebody other than what they are. Whereas the people of Nepal, especially the people from Acham and Far West, I found was so natural, so open, so honest, and so unaffected by what we were doing. The filming is, as you will see in the film, it's all very, very natural and very open, and they were just absolutely honest, amazing, very hospitable, lovely people. It was extremely enriching in some way. And the interesting thing that happened was when we went to shoot on the Dashain day in Reddycote, which is the primary village which we shot in, from where there are these two, Tapendra and Puran, the two laborers, the two migrant workers that we followed right from Bombay to Nepal and back throughout the film. There was Dandiya being celebrated there. So there's a very interesting cross-cultural mix going on. So somewhere Far West has huge amounts of Indian influences in their lives, Far West Nepal. Just as we are, unfortunately, what we are giving them in return is really using them for cheap labor and giving them aids. And there is this tacit acceptance of death, that death is an inevitability because they all have to go to India to work as watchmen, as labor, as cooks, as domestics. And whatever little money they bring back is what the families live on. But they are expecting them to all contract HIV at some level and die eventually. So this, I found that very, very depressing at some level, but very interesting that they've accepted this as a reality which does not and will not ever change for them, as the people in Kathmandu or the so-called policy makers of the country don't give a damn about them. It's a country which works on 80% remittance. So 80% of the people who are the workforce from Nepal are working in other countries. It is something which is convenient, and it's a status quo which works very well for both countries because it works in terms of remittance, since there is no development in Far West Nepal for the Nepalese, and it works as cheap labor for the Indians. So these poor men are caught in this vortex of a socio-economic and socio-political decadence, if I may say so, where neither system is willing to take cognizance of what they're going through or really help them. So much so that since 2008, 9 governments have changed. So there is absolutely no accountability of developmental money or the money that is there in the treasury. And every government that comes into power just loots the treasury and goes away. So where will there be any continuance of development or any accountability towards the people? It does not exist. The constitution of the country is still to be implemented. The rewritten constitution, which is supposed to be more inclusive and an updated version of the constitution, till date has not changed. The point I'm making is that I started making this film in 2008. It's today 2017. Nothing has really changed as far as the ground reality of the country is concerned. It is still in as much of a mess as it was then, which you will see in the film. And I want you to see this film to see the contrast between the 3 cities, 3 places, spaces I've shot in, namely Bombay, Delhi, Kathmandu and Acham, and see how this film comes together about this cross-border story, open border story, which unfortunately is still as relevant, as real and as ignored as it was when I started making this film in 2008. Thank you so much.